We are approaching 4 years since Arturas Karnisovas took over the Chicago Bulls, and kind of want to talk about where we've been and where we've gone and where we could go after this 4 years. We're also going to look at a new deal for the Chicago Bulls that could really change some things, as well as the Bulls breaking an attendance record. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And so I want to start off with, it's been right around 4 years since AK's taken over the team. And over that time, we have, one play-in victory. We got one playoff victory in that as well. And we got a playing game coming in as well to see, coming up tomorrow to see how far the Bulls can go. But over the last 4 years, right, the Bulls, while they have added talent to this team, I don't think anybody can doubt that from where it was before, the Bulls still sit maybe slightly above the way that we looked at the team. Keep in mind that Bulls team would have made the playoffs had Zach LaVine not went down with COVID after that same season that we traded for Nikola Vucevic. And so while I'm not in any way saying that the totality of the moves have not made the Bulls a better team, when you look at injuries, look at things like that, they definitely play a part into, the Bulls not living up to expectations over the last 3 seasons for sure. But outside of even just that notion, it's been a disappointment for the Bulls, man. It's been a really, as of right now, the clarity that we would have hoped for the roster when AK came in and he said they were going to build organically through the draft, that championships were the goal. We have fallen well short of that. And, I know I talked yesterday about the last 25 years for the Chicago Bulls and how the Bulls have definitely struggled over those last 25 years, right? And that's not all on AK by any stretch of the imagination. And while it at times takes GMs longer than 4 years to really turn this team around, you look at the vision of the other teams in the NBA, in Chicago, right? When you look at the Cubs, they have more of a direction, but still have some shortcomings there. Even the Chicago Sky yesterday really picking a new direction to go rebuild with their team, and they came out of that draft last night with 2 amazing pieces to build this team around. You look at the Chicago Bears, who, still haven't achieved a whole hell of a lot of wins yet, haven't made that playoff success yet, have their second year of having the first overall pick. They've picked a new direction for that team and new quarterbacks coming in here. And it's the Jerry Reinsdorf-owned teams and the White Sox and the Chicago Bulls that kind of sit in the place of the most uncertainty around their teams, the most dystopian outlook when it comes to their franchise's future, right? Now, make no mistake about it. AK has some ability to will and deal if he chooses to. The thing where it comes down to, that I think a lot of doubt from this Bulls fan base comes when it comes to this front office, is just the lack of movement, the lack of considerable movement that they've really had to even to flesh out their vision, right? This team was their vision. And I gave AK, and I still give AK tons of credit for how he came in and he built a team that was working. The whole point is to build a foundation. You build off that foundation, and then you see where it can take you. And having Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic with the young players up and coming in Kobe, Ayo, Patrick Williams, right? That was a foundation that was working to a degree, and that had the Bulls been able to focus on building off that foundation, I have no doubts, considering how we finished this season, the winning percentage we finished the season with, that we would have been in a much better place, at least contending for playoff spots instead of the play-in, right? I have no doubts of that. I want to make sure that I'm clear on that 100%. But part of the magic of being a front office is how you adjust on the fly, how you adjust to when your vision doesn't work. And that's been the thing that AK has really lacked at so much, is that they have not called an audible from their original plan. And like I've said many a times before, and I'm not the only one that said that, every year that passes by that you stay relatively the same while teams around you improve, you're getting worse. And that's where the Bulls sitting in this place right now, is that they are getting worse as a team. But, it doesn't seem like that vision comes. And I really stick on the words that AK gave at the end of season press conference last year, where he said that Bulls fans are going to be really surprised about what they do this offseason. And was no really surprise. And if any surprise, it was surprised by the lack of movement, right? So, and in no way am I calling for a rebuild. You guys know I'm actually anti-full rebuild. I am for a retooling. Whatever that retooling is, I'm not attached to any. Let me not say I'm not attached to any players, because Kobe White's Ascension IO, I'm definitely attached to those players. But I would, no matter what, if you improve the team, Bulls fans are going to rock with, right? Even if you do move on from a player that Bulls fans do like, but it drastically improves the team, I think people would buy into. Where you see the discourse right now from Bulls fans, I think roots in the fact that we're just not winning. If you win and you do it consistently, I think most of the criticism and things around the team get lessened because you're winning basketball games. And, you know, again, there are some definitely promising things. I talked about it yesterday from this season, the growth of Kobe, the growth of Io, Julian Phillips looking like, hey, he's going to be a player for us, right? What level of that's going to be there, that's still to determine by how he progresses, how he takes control of his own game and development. But again, I like to always err on the side of realism. And with the things that this front office has shown or lack thereof over the last handful of years, it leads me back to this prevailing thought. Until they show something different, there's no reason not to believe that continuity isn't going to be the thing, with the built-in excuses, reasons that they have for why this season went the way that it did, with injuries and other things like that. And while you see other teams around Chicago, not even looking just around the league, but other teams around Chicago that have more of a vision, that have more of a direction, that have more of a way. Now, that doesn't mean that all those things are going to work, right? To take back to my previous point, the Chicago Bears with Caleb Williams looking like that's who they're going to draft, it may not work out. And if it doesn't, all right, you got to go back to the drawing board, right? But one thing that Ryan Poles has shown is a level of aggression moving towards, and purpose in moving towards what his goal and his version of the team is going to be, right? The Cubs are 10-6. The White Sox, again, White Sox suck. And I hate that I'm a White Sox more than a Cubs fan. They're 2-14 to start the season. The Chicago Sky, right? I know a lot of people don't like the WNBA bringing it up and looking at them and saying, you guys know I'm a WNBA guy. I have a whole Chicago Sky channel, right? Have now picked a path. They came in, James Wade tried to, trade away a lot of those teams' assets. A new GM, new coach came in, and they immediately picked a direction and made the moves in that direction to add 2 studs to that team to build around. And you just want some of that vision from AK, and you want some of that vision from Eversley. You want some of that to be cleared. And, whether that comes via DeMar trade, a Zach trade, well, DeMar is probably not going to be traded unless it's sign and trade. Whatever that is, we want a team that is more actually competitive. And that's what's so funny about AK using the word competitive, because this is Chicago. And Chicago is one of the cities that appreciates competitiveness the most, right? If you had a team that fought hard all 82 games of the season, and we wound it up with 42-45 wins, most Bulls fans would take that. It's the nature of how you get there and how the team looks. This is still a team that, whether it's coaching or whether it's things that you look at sometimes game to game, and you just don't see that edge that is indicative of the city of Chicago. And that's where it leaves a lot of people kind of on the outs on how they feel about where this team is and where it could be and things like that. But Bulls fans still show out, and we're going to talk about how Bulls fans, we led the league in attendance, which is crazy in a record-setting year for the NBA. But I think clarity is the thing that we need the most. And at 4 years at AK, he's done some really good things, make no mistake about it. Like I said, I give him tons of credit for building that initial team. I know with revisionist history, a lot of people look at it and now say, hey, yeah, you should have never signed Lonzo. He had injury history. Not like this, right? You should have never signed Vooch or traded for Vooch. He was aging. He was coming off an all-star season. You should have never signed DeMar DeRozan. He's DeMar DeFrozen. Yeah, but he's been one of the best clutch players in the NBA since we signed him, and a huge part for why we win games, right? All those things are true, right? And I give AK credit for the vision that he initially came in with. But AK, we need to see more of that now, and I think that's what Bulls fans are seeing. Yes, AK got criticisms for giving up on Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter early, right? And while I'm still not the biggest of Wendell Carter, you look at Lauri Markkanen and how he's developed that, but I do think that damage was already done before Lauri came to this team. It is what it is when it comes down to that. It comes down to we need back that vision. And so criticisms on AK. And when you look at it, if you were going to be a team that went out and signed players through the free agency, which is perfectly fine, how did you supplement that with the draft, right? A bunch of question marks. I asked Pat, the designer, over on Locked on Bulls. We went over the young players, and I asked him, how many of these young players do you think you build with? How many do you give an incomplete? And how many do you think just aren't good, aren't going to be part of the Bulls' future? And I think the two that he gave that he doesn't think is going to be part of the Bulls' future was Patrick Williams, and if I believe so, Dalonte Terry as well. But, there's still a bunch of question marks on it. Like, we just saw Kobe White improve in his 5th year. We saw Ayo Dosunmu make a step up in his 3rd year, which is typically where you want to see and where you ask players to make that step up, right? It's still coming for Dalonte Terry, I got to give him credit for how he finished the season. Got to give Dalonte Terry a lot. More aggressive, more focused, right? Look more like an actual NBA player. Still is really raw. Still got some things he absolutely needs to work on. Still got some things that are just a little weird in his game, right? But he showed the aggression. He showed the mentality down the stretch. Julian Phillips, before he went down with injury, was really stepping up for the Chicago Bulls. And I think, like I said earlier, showed that he could be a player for the Bulls. Patrick Williams is one of those players. Patrick Williams has more potential has so much potential than in the world, right? But it comes down to this: Patrick Williams you don't know what Patrick Williams you're going to get from game to game. And I think if that mentality comes there first and he could just be consistent, that could go a long way with that, right? So you also have Adama Sanogo, who was an undrafted rookie by you, that looks like he can at least be something for you off the bench. We'll see to the varying degrees of that. We got an upcoming 1st-round pick as well. So we got things that we need to do, man. Marko Simonovic didn't work out. That's the 2nd-round pick. I'm not going to hold him against that. But so far, the most clear out of AK's picks, I think, is Ayo Dosunmu, and that came this season, right? And he signed a contract extension, 3 years, $21 million, very favorable contract. You can't deny that. But then you look at AK's misses, trading away picks that became Franz Wagner, right? And what Franz has now been. Now, there's no guarantee to say that Franz is that Bulls would have drafted Franz Wagner. But again, you look at that, right? So overall, AK still has time, and he's going to be given plenty of time to turn this thing around yet again. And whether it's this offseason where he doesn't have a whole lot of assets, next offseason where he could have more, depending on how he plays this offseason, there is still time for AK to fix this. And I'm not somebody who's completely down on it. It's just the fact that until you show me something, I'm going to be in this place where I'm always side-eyeing you, right? And that's my personal thing. I'm not expecting every Bulls fan to think, feel, or view it the same way I do. No, nobody should do that. I'm a little weird in life. But 4 years into this, 4 years, and we got one playoff victory, one play-in victory with maybe another one coming down the pipeline. We'll see how it comes with that. And a bunch of question marks, and that includes coaching. You've attached yourself to Billy Donovan as a head coach, has some very big shortcomings. I disagree with that. Billy Donovan's the biggest thing. I think the roster first. You improve the roster, Billy Donovan's going to be able to get something out of that roster. So I think we need to improve that. We need to fix out some things, and hopefully that comes this offseason, man. But thank you for sitting here through me. I'm working through my thoughts, stuff like that. But let's get back to it, man. The next topic that I want to talk about is, a twofold topic, right? So the NBA set an attendance record this year with 22.5 million fans in attendance during the regular season. The previous record was 22.2 million. So again, rising that up quite a bit. The NBA also had 791 sellouts. 63% of the games this season sold out, with that, which is crazy. And the Chicago Bulls led the NBA in attendance. Now, for those that have been around a lot of live streams, Football CF Candy is one of those guys who really feels like, hey, we got to boycott. If we don't show up to games, this is going to absolutely get the Bulls to make the moves that we do. And I always say what that is, even if, right, let's say this. Last time we saw the Bulls really dip, I think the last time we dipped out of the top 10 in attendance, that is where we saw some movement, but that still came via John Paxson having to go to the ownership and basically say, I don't know how to do my job anymore, get me out of here. But I do think that does send out a wake-up call, of course, to the team, of course, to the franchise, of course, to ownership, if that attendance drops by that, if attendance drops. But the thing when it comes down to me is, yeah, you can send a signal to the team to make some moves. That doesn't mean they're going to make the right moves, right? So, while I'm glad, and I always say, the United Center is one of the places that I look at as like, it's a sanctuary in a lot of ways. I love the UC. I have since I was a kid. The UC is just it's a special place, man. There's something about watching a basketball game in the United Center, especially when the crowd's going, especially when the Chicago Bulls are playing well in that game. It's just a different vibe. And I've been to a handful of NBA stadiums, but it's just different. Now, of course, the Bulls are my team, so even going to other stadiums is never going to have the same impact because the Bulls aren't necessarily my team. But the Bulls sold out 24 of their 41 home games this season. Not a whole bunch, right? It's not, all the home games, but we led the NBA in total attendance. We don't have the exact capacity numbers yet, but in a record-setting year, the Chicago Bulls, with the disappointment around this franchise, led the NBA in total attendance. And I think that says a lot about the support that Bulls fans have, the worldwide nature of Chicago Bulls fans, how Bulls fans, when they from around the world, not just around the country, around the world, try to go to the UC to catch a Chicago Bulls game. And, hopefully, for the conspiracy theorists that look at it and say, well, I don't even think it's a conspiracy theory, but for the people that look at it and say, old man Jerry's just about filling that pocketbook. And while, the attendance we're still selling and he can get a postseason in home game revenue as well with at least that postseason game. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Jerry's probably sitting there looking and smiling. But hopefully at some point, man, like the Bulls fans can get something that's rewarding for them showing up in the way that we do to show up and support this basketball team. But with that said, also, I wanted to talk about an interesting thing. So the Chicago Bulls are potentially moving from NBC Sports Chicago to Stadium. Now, there's an agreement between the Blackhawks, the Bulls, and the White Sox with NBC Sports Chicago. That expires in October, which is right before the start of the season. And that's when the NHL and the NBA seasons begin in October. Now, there is also a chance that they extend it, which would probably bring it to the end of the season. They can extend it 6 months with NBC Sports Chicago. But according to the Chicago Sun-Times, all three teams have signed now their rights as far as airing games over the stadium. So there could be an extension, which would then, like I said, move it to the full 2024-25 season ends up being still on NBC Sports Chicago. But this is a major change as far as that. And this is a major deal as well. NBC Sports Chicago has been the home for the Chicago Bulls for a whole hell of a long time. And it's already said that this could affect some jobs over at NBC Sports Chicago. And I know we're a Chicago Bulls focused thing. And while I do want to focus on that, Sinclair Broadcasting started Stadium in 2017. But Jerry Reinsdorf acquired the majority control in Stadium last year. So it was always kind of a precipice. Me and Pat used to make jokes over on Locked on Bulls that you can see a new podcast network starting over there because it was just expected that those teams were going to move over, and the Sox, the Bulls, and the Blackhawks kind of always move as a unit. So that's a major change. It could be a major shift that we could feel not only through the way that games are televised, the way that many of you guys watch games, but also the jobs of the people that cover the Chicago Bulls. This is a major thing, and I, for one, hope that extension, that 6 months extension, is signed to kind of allow for the full season next year to start so everybody can kind of keep their jobs and not scramble. But make no mistake about it, the Bulls moving from NBC Sports Chicago, which could happen as soon as the start of next season or the start of the 2025-26 season, this is a major change for the way people view Chicago sports, and we'll see how it's going to go, man. This, like I said, big change. This is a big change, and many people are going to be affected, and we'll see how that changes, man. I hope that with one thing, if it does change, right, maybe that's going to make the Bulls and the Sox more apt to, follow us because we're a winning franchise. Can you do something to turn your teams into winning franchises? Can you do that? Can you do that just a little bit for us? But I wanted to give you guys the news. You guys know I like to bring all the Bulls news possible out, and I do think that is a major shift for the Chicago Bulls as well, moving from NBC Sports Chicago to Stadium. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when it's going to happen at this point, and we'll wait to see if that 6 months extension is signed to keep them on NBC Sports Chicago for another season. But if it's not, we're talking about looking at Bulls games on Stadium as soon as next year, the beginning of next regular season. And that's going to be a major shift, like I said, for people before. But it is going to bring some more revenue in. You know, with that shift, that means a new contract was signed. Not to mean that that's going to end up going back into the team at all, because, again, unfortunately, that's just the ownership group that we have. You don't invest back into the team to a degree. But let me know what you guys think on that. How do you feel about the Bulls moving from NBC to Stadium? And how big of a shift would that be for your viewing habits and how you watch the Chicago Bulls? And like I said, give up some prayers out and some well wishes to the people, the ladies and gentlemen who do work covering those teams for NBC Sports Chicago, because listen, that's going to be a big shift. A lot of them may move over to Stadium. I don't want to speculate on anybody else's job, but you just never know how those things are going to shake out. But make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for our mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.